I first met PMH Atwater in 1997 when I went to my first IONS conference in San Antonio, Texas. It was the second one that they'd had there, and things were really in kind of a primitive state in a way. And I felt like a black sheep. I was shunned, sort of, because I hadn't died to have my near-death experience. It wasn't funny at all. I was at this conference. I thought it was crazy. I thought it was nuts because of things that had happened to me. I had gone 2 years before to Egypt on 3 days' notice, and I met Kimberly Clark Sharp there, who told me about IONS. And I had been doing research and couldn't come up with any explanation to explain why I went through this tunnel and saw the white light and knew what was it. I did that because I didn't think I was good enough to see God. And I knew that whatever I was dealing with was amazing. And I felt love like I can't even begin to describe. It takes 9 hours to tell my story. But in any case, I finally made it to an IONS conference only to be rejected, because even though I had all the symptoms of a near-death experience, my life had turned 180 degrees. I was intuitive, I had future memory, I had all kinds of these weird things happening. My life was crazy. And I thought I was losing my mind, just pure and simple. And so I went down there to find out, and people were not nice to me. And then I talked to PMH Atwater, and she was the light at the end of the tunnel. Excuse the pun.
Oh, God.
She was wonderful to me. She took me seriously and talked to me genuinely and from her own heart, and told me that no, I did have an experience, and it didn't matter whether I actually died under the knife or in an accident or something, or whether I was just called and I went through the tunnel and saw the white light. Didn't matter. It was still an experience. And because of that, because of her encouragement, I continued on, and I felt I was being guided to start Chicago IONS. Every time I got in the line at the grocery store and started talking to somebody, they were an NDE. I mean, it happened like 4 or 5 times within 3 or 4 days. It was really big. So I had maybe a list of 20 names. I got their names and their contact information. I had 20 or 30 names all of a sudden. And I said, well, I do think that I'm supposed to do this. And I talked to Pat Williamson, who was minister at Unity North Shore at that time. And he said, good, do it here. And so I made flyers. The flyers are the same that we have today. I was given all that information, what to do, how to do it, and I just did it, and we started. And the rest is history, but the person really responsible for getting me on the path where, with PMH's loving consultation with me there, because she was the only one who really went out of their way to be nice, and I think that's a very significant character that one should pay a lot of attention to, because after we've been to the other side, we know the only thing that matters is how much love you give and how much love you receive. Nothing else makes any difference at all. So with that, I want to give a very loving and warm welcome to our guest speaker today.
Okay, let's get down to business. I come from Idaho. We don't mince words. But we call a spade. So let's do that. Let's talk about the new kids. In my travels of doing my research. And you know, I began in 1978. My research base is now nearly 4,000 adult and child experiencers of near-death states. I'm a field worker. I'm a cop's kid. I was raised in a police station. So this is my protocol. My dad would always say, the body says more than the mouth does. So I'm not just interviewing people, I'm looking at you. And I'm studying. You know, what you're doing with your eyes, what you're doing with your shoulders, your arms, your feet. So I've been doing this for a long time. And I want you to know why. Nobody with any sanity would agree to be a researcher in a pioneering field. I mean, you just don't do this if you're sane. The only reason I'm a researcher is I was told to do that in my third near-death experience. In my third near-death experience, it's among the things that happened to me was a very special voice spoke to me. I call it the voice like none other. This was not a guide, this was not a guardian, this was not an angel. This was a voice like I had never heard before. I didn't know a voice could be like this. It was a voice that filled the entire universe. And that voice said, and I quote, "Test revelation. You are to do the research. One book for each death." Book 1 was not named. Books 2 and 3 were, by the way. Future Memory is book 2. I was told what was to be in them, but not how to do the work. And most of you realize or know that most near-death experiences come from violence or trauma. So you've got a body to be rebuilt afterward. And I had to relearn how to crawl, how to stand, how to walk, how to run, how to climb stairs, tell the difference between left and right, see properly, hear properly, and rebuild all of my belief systems. So it took me about a year before I started doing my research. And it was only here in Chicago. This is where it started, folks. Here in Chicago at O'Hare Airport. I happened to be there when Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she had to wait on her plane. It had been delayed another hour. And I saw her, went up to her, introduced myself. And she said, "Let's talk." So we sat on a bench like a couple of schoolgirls, and I told her about my 3 near-death experiences, and she validated me. She said I was a near-death survivor. She did not use the word experiencer. She told me about the experience. I had never heard of Raymond Moody, never heard of life after life. She did not mention that either. And it's wonderful to be validated, but I was left with more questions than answers. And I began my research about 2 months later. So it began here in Chicago. And I hold this very, this energy here in my heart because it was at O'Hare Airport when I met Elizabeth. So she gave me that direction, and I've been doing it ever since, like some kind of idiot. You're working, or I did, day and night. I kept an average work week of like 6.5 days per week, averaging about 12 hours a day. So you gotta know I was obsessive. Yes, also a little crazy. And about 10 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, I gave myself permission to work a 5-day work week. Maybe about 8 hours a day, and I feel absolutely lazy. And I get to the bottom of what's going on. I want to know. And so, yeah. So doing all this work, I'm noticing with children the near-death kids, I'm noticing that normal, ordinary kids born anywhere to anybody, normal, natural, everyday kids, were matching, or nearly so, the traits of near-death kids. And I'm noticing, wait a minute here, those children died and came back with these different traits and characteristics. But these kids are just being born the natural way to normal parents. Nothing like that happened. Wait a minute here, whoops. Something else is going on. And that's when I began my work. Now, before I go on any further, I noticed in the audience some people talking about maybe they were a near-death experiencer, but they don't remember the experience, and maybe it happened in childhood. I ran across and discovered a lot of cases of pre-birth near-death experiences, birthing near-death. A lot of cases come from birth trauma. So maybe you might have had a near-death experience related to birth trauma, and then afterward, toddler, and on up. As near as I can tell, there's no age that you cannot have a near-death experience. If you got the book, The New Children and Near-Death Experiences in the back, I'm just so glad they have that book, because it's the most thorough book ever written on children's experiences. And the frontispiece in that book was written by John Raymond Leona, and he had his near-death experience inside his mother's vagina as he was being born.
Holy smokes.
Never forgot it. True bitch evidence in the book. So you can be any age and have a near-death experience, so I wanted to say that. But I want to launch now into the new kids who are sort of like near-death kids. And the book about that is really three books, The New Kids and Near-Death Experiences, Beyond the Indigo Children, and now Children in the Fifth World. And I want to really emphasize Children in the Fifth World because there's a lot of data in there, folks. Name, dress, phone number, there's a lot of material in there. So if you don't get much here today, get the book and look it up. Because I respect the right of all of you to go further and do more and talk to these people and run with this. Don't just depend on me. So what's going on with the kids today? I truly believe we are witnessing evolution in our time. I truly and firmly believe that the near-death, not near-death, well, that contributes to it, but I firmly believe that the human species is evolving. We're not becoming a new species, we're becoming an updated species. We are evolving. In the book, I give myself permission to be a little bit esoteric. And I say to you, please take all of these labels, indigo children, crystal children, rainbow children, star seeds, and just sort of push them out the door. Take those labels and chuck them. They're actually causing more harm than good. They're really exaggerated. But go back to all those labels and take all of the characteristics from each of those labels. Chuck the label, but take the characteristics, bunch them together, and you've got the new kids. For some of them more various characteristics than others, but that's the pattern. If we allow ourselves to be a little bit esoteric We can go back with Theosophy, Edgar Cayce, the oral histories. If you track mass mind, which I do, there's lots of different sources of indigenous people, traditional people, who talk about the changing of the human species on the earth plane, and to sort of put it in modern terms, that we go through large cycles of evolution here on the earth plane. We go through incredibly large cycles, and we're here now, the human being, in the fifth, we're here in the fifth world, and many of us are fifth root race people. When we're talking about root race, R-O-O-T, root, that means your base core DNA. So we're talking the base core DNA of the human species. And I would suggest to you that the fifth root race has been here for a while, but it is now ascending. We hear all of this talk about ascension. What it is we as human beings are moving up. We're moving up a notch or two. Where do I begin? Let me begin on the plus side, with embracing science. And taking a larger view, for a few minutes anyway, of where we are, who we are as human beings. And I'm going to go back a ways. When we're talking about the fifth root race, or this new pattern, do you realize that that pattern was active at the time of Jesus? Not that many, but there were some there. Every renaissance the world has ever known was started by, run by, excited by fifth root race people. The fifth root race began to come in huge clusters in the 1800s, especially from 1840 on. The New Thought movement is all fifth root race. Emerson, Thoreau, Charles Fillmore, Ernest Holmes, all fifth root race people. That quality, that pattern, well, we saw a lot more in the 60s with the dawn of Aquarius. We saw a lot more in the 70s. But the floodgates opened wide about 1982. You're seeing them now everywhere. This pattern has now crossed land masses and is in every population group on the planet. So you might be a fifth root race person too. Maybe Great Aunt Tilly was a fifth root racer. You know, there's a lot of us here who are the fifth root race, maybe all of us. This pattern of real creativity and intelligence and intuition and inquiry and innovation and, well, let me just talk about it on the plus side here. Intelligent, even if flunking in school. They're good at math. Don't believe them if they declare opposite. About 1/3 of geniuses, even if learning disabled. Music-oriented. Well, everybody's music-oriented, but these kids are more so. They're very rhythmic. Unusually creative and spiritually minded. They're intuitive. They're psychic. Many remember past lives. You know, you don't have to talk to them about reincarnation. They already got the stuff. They know. Natural-born healers. Ready-to-go entrepreneurs. irreverent, quirky, unique, visionary problem solvers, very knowing, volunteer-minded, humanitarians, groupies who move as if part of a collective, often attend night school in addition to dreaming, abstract at very young ages, spatial learners, fusion of sexes and gender mixing. They're multi-sensory, multi-channelers who live in a multiverse. I'll get to the minus side in a minute. I want to talk a little bit more about this. I want to talk about intelligence. It's going off the charts, folks. In those countries that use the standard IQ test, for about the last 15 years, 1/3 of the children who take that test, and we're talking global, in those countries that use it, 1/3 are scoring between 150 to 160. Now, some teachers will say, well, 132 is genius, 136 is genius. Some teachers will say, well, 140. I'm saying 150 to 160 because that's what they're finding. We have 2 genes that build a better brain. So obviously, this gene has awoken. But 1/3 of our people have both genes. This jump cannot be traced to the family. This is not genetic. It cannot be traced to better teaching. It cannot be traced to better food and better diets. We can't find what's causing it. We can't pigeonhole it. And this is true with learning disorders. If you've got an autistic child or a child with a learning disorder, have them tested with the Raven's test instead of the Wechsler test. I may be mispronouncing that word. Wechsler test is your standard IQ test. And, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. But have them take the Raven's test. The Wechsler test tests crystallized in intelligence what you've learned. The Raven's test tests fluid intelligence, what you can learn. What we found now in scores, like for instance autistic children, is 1/3 are scoring between 150 to 160.
Wow.
1/3. Woohoo! This reminds me of Outer Limits, We're doing that. And this is happening. And it's been happening now for at least around 1986 or 1982 and on. Excellent with math, don't let them fool you. Absolutely ready to go entrepreneurs. Some of these kids at the age of 4 and 5 are starting their own businesses. we got what is it, Moe's Ties? Little, what is it, 10 or 11-year-olds started Moe's Ties. It's a special kind of little bow tie. This kid is just hundreds of thousands of dollars this kid is making. A lot of them are making their own money to go to college, if they want to go to college. Many of them don't. Little kids selling jewelry out of their, their bedroom. I love this. I love this. This is a quote. This is hot off the press. It's a 19-year-old girl. She is a Muslim. 19-year-old Muslim in Egypt, a girl, has invented a new, cheaper, and virtually fuel-less propulsion method which can harness quantum physics and so-called zero-point energy to replace the familiar chemical explosion and radioactive technology. I mean, it's just, what's your fun? They're changing us. Groupies that move and act as part of a collective, that's why they catch on so quickly to cell phones and iPhones and iPads and all this stuff. It's like they understand nanoseconds. Forget minutes, nanoseconds, you know? And they really are groupies. I want to talk about often attend nights. Let me give you an example. I was in a large shopping mall. And to my right was a mother with a boy, maybe 6 or 7. And tall was a couple with another boy, looked about the same age. And these two boys started calling each other by name, recognized each other, ran up to each other, and started talking about the assignment they had received last night in night school. The catch is, the little boy over here on my right was local. The other little boy was a tourist. He was just passing through. He and his family were just passing through. They'd never been there before. These two boys knew each other's names, and they had received the same assignment last night in night school. So when I'm talking about night school with these children, please understand, I am not talking about dreaming. Do you all get that?
Yeah.
No dreams. I'm talking about the imaginal world. And I talk about that a lot in the book. The difference between imagination and the imaginal world. Imagination is something you make up. You know that. You know you created that. That's yours. But the imaginal world already pre-exists. It comes to you. You don't go to it. This is what shamans work with a lot. The imaginal world. Pre-existing. This is what J.R.R. Tolkien talked about in his personal letters when he said, I did not make up the Middle-earth and Hobbit. I went there, and I was a reporter, and I wrote what I saw. That's in his actual writings. The imaginal realms. Any of you who split dimensions, any of you who go back and forth between different places and spaces, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about pre-existent worlds, pre-existent cultures, pre-existent orders. There is a hidden order. As we were being created, as we came here, as we became human beings, there were other orders also being created who also came here. There are many hidden orders. And these children just recognize these and talk to many of these beings. They're not imaginary beings, most of them. They might be from the imaginal world. They might be from another dimension. But please know that they're there and the kids interact with them. Abstract at very young ages. If I were to be asked, what is the greatest talent of the new kids, I would say their ability to abstract. They start abstracting usually at about the age of 2, or maybe when they start talking. We call it wisdom. No, not wisdom, they're abstracting. You know what I mean by abstracting? Dealing on the conceptual level. Let me give you a couple of examples. This is Michaela. She's one of the new kids. 2.5. And she and her mom were in some kind of discussion, and she got frustrated. You see this a lot with the new kids. Very prone to anger, but we'll get into that in a little bit. She got very fussed. She went up to her mother and wagged her finger in front of her mother, and she said, I don't know the word for that yet. 2.5. Another example, this time from my near-death base. This is a boy in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia area, first grade, drowned during the first grade time, about halfway through the school year, and revived, had a near-death experience. When he was able to come back to school, well, let me sort of give you a little backstory here. Like, what are most kids doing in the first grade? They're reading See, Spot, Run. Dick and Jane. He comes back reading Greek mythology and understands it. And goes up to his teacher and says, why was the book Robinson Crusoe ever written? This is abstracting. These kids are just absolutely out of this world in their ability to be part of and fully accept a world and an existence most of us had to learn was there. For them, it's wide open. And they don't know enough not to talk about it. And so they talk about it. And fusion of sexes and gender mixing. Get ready. You know, in a study that was done a couple of years ago by Katie Couric on television in various high schools in the United States, found that, what was it, about 48% of the kids were bisexual. The kids today most of them are completely accepting of gender mixing, transgender, you name it. But it's very interesting, at least to me, that we've had that there's more and more and more hermaphrodites being born. In the United States, that's people with both sexes, you know, you're born that way. In the United States, 1 out of 1,000 births, at least 5 years ago, that was the figure for hermaphrodites. In Germany, it's 1 out of every 100. Why? I don't know. So, Germany is the first country in the world. This happened November 2, last year, 2013. I've got the cookie here. Germany, the country of Germany, now recognizes 3 genders. M for male, F for female, X for indeterminate. Just last week, India, the country of India, now recognizes 3 genders. These children are going to mix up and change and turn around how we look at sex and gender. And they're doing it now. Basic profile on the minus side. You knew that was coming. impulsive and impatient. Impulsive and impatient. Feel entitled, overconfident. Ultimate consumer. Underlying anger, little tolerance for lies and manipulation. I'm not saying these kids are just angry, angry, angry. I'm saying they have little tolerance for lies and manipulation. They don't have the same degree we have to tolerate someone who is lying to them or giving them a bit of razzmatazz, like politics, like families. If you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, if you're lying to them or exaggerating, you're going to hear about it. Or if you don't hear about it, they in their own minds are saying, can't trust you. Very little tolerance for lies and manipulation. They prefer the astral and synthetic worlds to this world. And I give you a lot of antidotes and solutions in the book for that. Get them out in nature if you can. Make mud pies. Wool. Make cookies. You know, get the hands and the feet involved in doing something. I want to really emphasize that right now because most schools in the United States no longer teach writing, cursive writing.
What?
No longer teach cursive writing. They've done away with it. Folks, you need to use hands. So what's happening with these kids, they're growing without much influence or knowledge or interaction with touch. They need that ability. Get them in calligraphy. Do something with them so they're using their hands. You know, get them a bar of soap and help them learn how to carve. Maybe a squirrel or something out of the bar of soap. You know, anything. The potter's wheel, take up pottery. You know, you've got all that wet clay, you're slopping it on that twirling disc. Hands. Get the hands busy. Get the feet busy. These children are growing up without a sense of touch. It's the digital age. The emphasis is on the mind. Well, that's great. They're super intelligent, but they're growing up to be super intelligent idiots. Get them tinkering in the garage, making things, doing things. Bring back touch. We've got to have that. Highly sensitive to drugs, snack and processed foods and metals. Much more so than the kids of yesteryear. Highly sensitive to toxic, incoherent electronic energy. We're in the digital age. Get them out the door or do something that helps them use their body, their hands, and their feet. Do not assimilate nutrition well. Forget about organic. That works with some kids, but some kids it doesn't. Some kids need more fat. You need to test these kids to find, they're individuals, test them to find out what will work for them. No concept of authority. Do I have to tell you that? I'll underscore that. No concept of authority. They need mentors, not bosses. You listen to these kids. You talk with these kids. You reflect with these kids. You dance with these kids. You get on the floor and you nose with these kids. You don't just parent them.
they really don't know what parents are, or they probably don't respect parents. So learn a little different way of handling authority. They appear wiser than they are. Self-deception is a major issue. A lot of these kids are getting lost in witchcraft, they're getting lost in crystal use, they're getting lost in psychism, they're getting lost because of possession. They really need good teachers. You're not going to learn anything off the internet or the latest, greatest movie or what's on TV on how to handle the dark side. And they need to understand that, and they don't, and they're getting in trouble. They're very sensitive to trickster energy, possessions, and attachments. You know, if you know anything about psychism or the psychic, you know what I'm talking about. They do not understand the effort needed to process or refine. That's why they're just, they'll take your music or your creation or your invention and they'll give it away free to everybody because they don't understand that it took you years and years and years to get that, to hone that ability and to get that talent and refine it and for the purpose not only of sharing it, but of making a living. They don't understand that. So help them to connect the dots. They do not recognize boundaries, even that of skin. Get a lot of cutting with these children. They expect things to come to them. Clothes are more important than language skills or behavior skills. Their greatest fear is silence. That's a big clue. Their greatest fear is silence. I want to jump in here right away and say, and I couldn't give you the names of the schools, I'll just say schools. What they're finding now in schools, among the things they're finding in certain schools, is that if they have 50 minutes of silence in the morning and 50 minutes of silence in the afternoon, that means silence. That means real silence. That means principals. That means teachers. That means a janitor. 15 minutes of silence in the morning, 15 minutes of silence in the afternoon. They can meditate, they can dream, they can do whatever. Just silence. And it improves scores 80%. You want to know what will help kids in school? Help them to face their greatest fear. Silence. Wow. Doesn't cost a dime. It won't raise your taxes. Silence. Wow. Of course, you all know that one of the big challenges we have now with sex is the, you know, the new sex toy. Y'all know sexting by now, don't you? The new sex toy. They're flashing and doing all kinds of things and sending it to everybody. They don't know that's against the law. And they're getting caught. Woo-hoo! Caught 100 of them in the state of Virginia. Whole gang of them. So we need to sort of educate kids. We don't want them winding up in prison for something like that. I find myself sort of wanting to jump around here because there's so much material I don't know what to talk about first. But I want to spend just a little bit of time here on learning disorders. Whether it's autism or ADHD or Asperger's or whatever. And I'm going to recommend a book. And that book is Kids Beyond Limits. I won't give you the secondary title because it's long. Kids Beyond Limits is by Annette Banal. I do not know if I'm pronouncing her name right. It is spelled A-N-A-T, last name B as in boy, A-N-I-E-L. It's like Daniel, only it starts with a B. Annette Banal. Kids Beyond Limits. Now, I don't know how many here in this audience remembers Pearl Harbor. I do. It was vivid. And it just really imprinted my whole life. And after Pearl Harbor, we got the polio epidemic. And I don't know how many remember the polio epidemic that we had in the United States, but it was so serious that people were literally dropping like flies walking across the sidewalk. I mean, it was that serious and it involved that many people. Crippling people. And I was one of those that dropped. I was 4 years old. I had a milder case of it, however. But a lot of people, you know, the iron lung and in metal braces and crippled for life. There was a woman in Australia by the name of Sister Kenny. Well, they called her Sister Kenny. And she looked at all of this crippling, and she found a natural way to handle it and work with it through massage and heat and water and all kinds of different things. Natural stuff. And started up clinics and hospitals. And she got an almost 100% recovery rate. I mean, her work was stunning. And the American Medical Association never recognized Sister Kenny and her work. Her work was not recognized anywhere by any medical association. Sister Kenny. As far as I'm concerned, Annette Banal is another Sister Kenny. We have a woman here who's gone the natural way. She's found sound, she's found rhythm, she's found touching, she's found food and, you know, massage and all kinds of different ways of working with these children, and she's bringing them back at stupendous rates. I'm going to say 80 to 85% or more. Many of them full recovery from autism and, you know, all this stuff. Or brings them back to a point that's really high on the spectrum. I mean, she's just doing fantastic work. And I don't know of a single doctor or a single hospital that's recommending her work. And I'm getting a little fluffy here and saying, wait a minute, you know, I remember Sister Kenny, we got another one. So let's pay attention to what Annette Banal is doing. Because, you know, she's going the natural way and it's just wonderful. I want to give you another caution here. For those children, especially ADHD, who grow up drugged, you know, they get, you know, the sentence comes into school, and they go up year after year after year taking these various drugs to control their ADHD or whatever it is they have. And then they grow up. Well, we now have a bunch of them that are grown up. And a book I would recommend is, let's see, where is that book? I thought I had it right here. Ah, here it is. Dosed. The Medication Generation Grows Up. It's by Caitlin Bell Barnett. Let me tell you about Dosed. The Medication Generation Grows Up. What we're finding now with these children that are growing up drugged, they don't know what love is. They've never felt it. They don't know what it is. A wake-up call. Wake-up call. Turn to his people like Annette Vanel. Wake-up call. We can't just drug these kids year after year after year after year after year. The human race is changing. We are becoming new. We're becoming different. Let me tell you a little bit about where we've come from. And again, just turning to science. I don't think you have to go the route of the esoteric route. You can just turn to science, and it'll blow your cookies. Pure science, studying haplotypes, which is your blood types, mitochondria, DNA. The earliest female traces back 150,000 to 250,000 years ago. This is science. I'm just giving you facts. The earliest male traces back 60,000 to 100,000 years ago. Guess who's been here longer? A lot longer. And I wonder how we procreated. We know that sharks can procreate without a male. Some other animals can do it. Wonder how we did it. Yeah, it's just really interesting. And especially if you really follow the haplotype research, blood types. And we're finding all kinds of things that turn what we think our lineage is upside down. We're finding that in Scotland, a lot of the people are Egyptian. Yeah. We're finding that that a lot of the people in Alaska are Europeans. I'm speaking the tribal people. I'm speaking the native peoples are European. They don't like to hear that, by the way. I got a kick out of this one guy who is an African American, very, very black, black skin, just really black, not brown like my husband is. Yes, yes, yes. My husband is an African American, but he's sun bronzed. So, to me, he's a nice brown guy. And everyone looked at me, I'm speckled. I'm not white, I'm speckled. So he's brown and I'm speckled. But I was talking to this one, around this one guy, and he was angry. He was absolutely angry when his haplotype research was done, because none of his characteristics, none of his blood type went back to Africa. None of it. He was French and German. He just couldn't handle it. He's having time processing now. Because he was previously a member of the Black Panthers. None of it goes back to Africa. I mean, we're all different. You can't just go by your color. Whether you're speckled or brown or white or green or yellow. Let me give you just a little cute little thing here. Sometimes I do this, I get off the track. One of the things that happens a lot to near-death experiences afterwards, you can no longer handle sun. You have to be careful of sun. You have to be careful of sound too, but you have to be careful of sun. And I couldn't handle more than about 15 to 20 minutes of sunshine, and I would turn orange. I didn't say pink. I didn't say red. I said orange. And so when my husband and I would be walking uptown, hand in hand, you know, African Americans can tan, you know. He's black, I'm orange, we look like Halloween. He wouldn't walk with me anymore. Let's pray. We're not too weird. I didn't just thought add that to the chair. But I want to sort of express one more of these kind of oops that we get from science. Because science has discovered a haplotype. They call it the X haplotype. That does not trace anywhere on our planet at all. The Berbers, a lot of the Berbers have the X haplotype. Most of your let's see, the Navajo, the Algonquin, the Ojibwe, the Sioux, the Yakima, the Basques, most of your Basques have the X haplotype. It's interesting if you go back to the Edgar Casey's readings, and he's talking about the different migrations and groups of people across our world, and the X haplotype follows his tracings exactly. When he was talking about the higher intelligence, people from other worlds, other planets, when he was talking about this greatly increased knowledge, and the people fled during the various earth changes, and they fled to all these areas where they have strong amounts of the X haplotype, and it's a perfect match. So I just thought I'd sort of add that to your news for today, because it's kind of interesting. Let's get back to these little kids. Of course, in the book, I just give you all kinds of suggestions. Let me just run off for parenting, because there's so many parents here, and how to handle their anger. There's a whole section on how to handle their anger. Parents, do not be shocked or upset by their psychic ability. Take it in stride as natural and normal. Do not be upset by their ability to occasionally know the future, be objective and detached. Maintain control and discipline through cleverness, not punishment. Bargain, negotiate, and compromise. That works. Keep them busy with chores, no payment. Keep them busy with projects and crafts and trips. Allow them and enable them and encourage them to volunteer at different places that need their skills, especially at senior citizen centers. Especially at senior citizen centers. Get them with the older people. Get them in gardens so they're doing the gardening. Even if you're just in an apartment, you can garden in an apartment. They need that dirt. They need to watch things grow. Care for animals. They need to learn that. Oh, cookies molded by hand, food sculptures. I mean, they, you know, they need that, their hands in the glue and the mush. Give an allowance, 40% in a regular savings account, another 40% that they can use for whatever they want to use for. 10% off the top goes to whatever is spiritual to them, whether it's a church, whether it's a group, whatever is spiritual to them. 10% goes off the top. The other 10%, the remaining 10%, is a long-term, no hands interrupted, long-term savings account. You need to start thinking in terms of retirement or larger purchases. So 10%, no touch. Remember that 40% savings, well, you know, that can be for a car, maybe school, but that 10%, don't touch. Or maybe they're 30 or 40. Firm rules of turf. The parents must have quiet rooms. Kids have quiet rooms. Privacy is earned. Teach ethics and questioning and anger management, and teach philosophy. The earlier, the better, especially in the first grade. A little bit of philosophy class, but certainly by the third grade, we need to have philosophy in the schools. Encourage entrepreneurship, have their own business, make their own products, learn marketing, limits to television, computers, Game Boys, call phones, digital devices. Never take them to bed with them. No. Check them at the door. No computers, no digital devices in any bedroom. Ever. This is also good for adults. It interferes with your aura, your natural energy, with your heart, really interferes with your body and body energies. So check those things at the door. Yep. They must verify their truth. Know that. They must verify their truth. They need to go out and prove it to themselves. Embrace the spiritual. Exercise together. Say grace. Before the meals, pray, contemplate. They have a great deal of tolerance, interfaith, religious practices. Get them involved in the spiritual. Watch their sugar levels, nutrition, food, allergies. What they found in Canada, and I forget the name of the psychologist, there was a psychologist in Canada, and parents were bringing their kids with, ADD, ADHD, and a lot of these learning disorders. And so the psychologist did, before they do a thing with the kids, had them food tested. First thing they did is have them food tested. And they turned around the learning disorders like 85-90%, just by changing their diet. Of course, they work with them too. But the diet is such a big thing. Of course, we touch a lot, love past, family gatherings, rituals. Oh, that's so important for these kids. Ooh. Yes. Technology is outpacing biology. And we're all getting hit by that. Adults, grandparents, kids, everybody. They did a study in England a number of years ago, and what they found was that the children were losing their ability to abstract by puberty. Well, abstracting is their greatest talent. And they're losing it by puberty. And they found out the reason why. It's not so much television and the programming. It's the constant, how do I put this into words? Because clicking. Most television shows, I believe most television shows now, the sponsors demand that there must be what they call a startle. And maybe 7 in the first 10 to 15 minutes. There must be startles because the brain goes to sleep. If you're sitting in front of the television set for maybe 5 or 6 minutes, the brain starts going to sleep. So you have to have a startle. Loud noises, a punch in the gut, all the violence that's on television, all of the quick, fast things, loud, those are startles. And that creates, cortisone, a lot of this destructive chemicals in the body are created then, and we're getting startle after startle after startle. And this is what's dumbing down the kids, is all these startles. So do be careful with that. But any ambient electromagnetic energy, if there's a barrage of it,